Hola, ¿qué tal amigos? Buenos días, buenas tardes y buenas noches. No importa la hora que sea, siempre es un gran momento para aprender español con Profesor Pablo. Esta lección aquí a mi izquierda es una lección muy grande para nosotros, antes y después. Pero, primero, estoy estrenando una camisa nueva. Esta camisa de mangas cortas me la regaló mi querida señora para la Navidad pasada. Esta es la primera vez que me la pongo, ¿verdad? Para hacer un video. La camisa tiene una historia muy linda. Hay una señora que es artista, pintó un cuadro de la costa del sur de California, empezando con Huntington Beach y yendo al sur hasta San Diego. Desde Huntington Beach hasta San Diego. Estas son playas diferentes, lugares turísticos diferentes a lo largo de la costa del sur de California. Y todo, ¿verdad? Lo que se ve en la camisa se ve en el cuadro que la señora pintó. Increíble. Ella pintó su cuadro del sur de California, la costa del sur de California, las ciudades, etc. Y mandó hacer una tela. She ordered fabric to be made from her painting. Mandó hacer tela de su cuadro. Y de la tela hizo las camisas. La señora, ella misma, she herself, hizo las camisas. Increíble. Mi señora compró esta camisa del Art Fair que tienen 2 veces al año en Carlsbad, California. Y miren, el bolsillo aquí está el bolsillo. Dice 101. 101 es la carretera principal que va por la costa, por toda la costa de California, pero estamos hablando de Huntington Beach hasta San Diego. La carretera 101, ¿verdad? Miren, parte de 101 está en esta parte de la camisa y el 0 y el 1 aquí están en el bolsillo. Mi señora dice que es muy difícil hacer eso. Así que estoy estrenando, debuting, wearing for the first time, esta camisa que tiene una gran historia de una señora artista que es tremenda, ¿verdad? Y yo vivo en el sur de California, so I am representing. Yo estoy representando el sur de California donde yo vivo. Ok, la lección de hoy, antes y después. Please subscribe, please like. Hopefully, if you're on lesson 270 something, whatever this is, you've subscribed by now, or you've liked. You've had over 270 opportunities to subscribe. So please, if you haven't, subscribe. Thank you so much. Okay, we got to go cluster by cluster, and we're going to bust the clusters because if I didn't have these little markers, colored markers around, and it was just a big blob of print, you'd be turned off. You turn around and go turn on the TV or the radio, go out in the garden, do something, right? But not learn Spanish. You have to break it down into edible chunks. Learning a foreign language, right? It's like eating food. You just can't take a banana and jam it all in at once. You can't take a big ribeye steak and jam it in the mouth all at once. You have to cut it into pieces, eat it, swallow, and let the body digest piece by piece. That's what we're doing here. Here's a piece of the steak. Here's a piece of the banana. Here's a bite out of the apple. And here's part of the peach, right? And here's a grape over here. The point I'm making is that the cluster approach, our brain is like, I think, like our mouth and our stomach, the eating and digestion processes, right? You just can't stuff everything in. You have to chop it up, take it a bite at a time, something that you can handle. Okay, here's our first cluster. Antes and después. We know antes is before and después is after. Now, going back over here, antes is before, después is after. Después can also be later. Después, voy después, I'm going later. So después is after or later. Here, antes and después can be followed by an infinitive, right? And followed by an infinitive, and it means either before, in, or after ing. Verb number 1 is the ing, the ando y yendo form of the verb. So let's try some. After eating would be después de comer. In English, it's eating with an ing, but in Spanish, it is an infinitive. And I'll tell you why. Because if you have a preposition, right, and you have a verb after a preposition in Spanish, I don't care what the verb is, it must be in the infinitive form. That's right. If you have a preposition in Spanish followed directly by a verb, it's got to be the infinitive form. That's why in English it's ing, but in Spanish it's not después de comiendo, después de comer. After leaving, después de salir. After going to bed, después de acostarme. After hearing about it, después de escucharlo. Let's go with antes. Before leaving, antes de salir. Before taking the test, antes de tomar el examen. Before seeing the movie, antes de ver la película. Before talking to him, you better blah, 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 antes de hablar con él. So antes and después de can be followed by verb number 0, which is the infinitive. In English, we use the ing. In Spanish, we use the infinitive. We use verb number 1 in English, verb number 0, infinitive, in Spanish. Also, antes and después de can be followed by a noun. Before church, antes de la iglesia. Before school, antes de la escuela. Before the game, antes del partido. Before the dance, antes del baile. After the tournament, después del torneo. After the movie, después de la película. After dinner, después de la cena. So there you go. You can use antes and después de followed by an infinitive or by a noun. Okay, that's cluster 1. Cluster 2, antes de que plus verb number 8, present subjunctive, or verb number 9, past subjunctive. Okay, before. If you're talking about something that hasn't happened yet, like before I leave tomorrow, let's say it's a trip, so you're going to use irse. So you can't say antes de que me voy. That's totally wrong. If you say it, someone's going to understand what you mean, but it's totally wrong. But it would be the present subjunctive is used to say something that you're referring to that hasn't happened yet. Before I leave tomorrow, before I take off, antes de que me vaya. Your wedding's coming up in 2 weeks and you say, gosh, before I get married, I got to do all this and that. Antes de que me case, opposite vowel, present subjunctive. Before we leave today, not on a trip, just leave the room or leave work. Antes de que nos vayamos or antes de que salgamos. Before it starts raining, I love that one. Antes de que, we like here with Profesor Pablo Spanish to talk real Spanish. To learn how to say what we say so commonly in our native language in Spanish. Before it starts raining, how many times have we heard that when we were kids? You guys better get in before it starts raining. We better get in before it starts raining. Before it starts raining. Antes de que. Now we've got to take empezar. It's an IE stem change. It's Z is going to go to C. If you spell it, it's going to be an E. Antes de que empiece a llover. Hey, why is it llover? Empiece a llover. Because a is a preposition. If you have a verb after a preposition in Spanish, it must be infinitive, verb number 0. You see, you just learn. Grammar, learning to speak by studying grammar is not going to happen, right? It's like studying water in a pool, how the temperature rises and falls, and what the chemical composition is of the water, and the depth of the water, and so on and so forth. That's not going to help you to swim. You got to get in the water and swim, right? Well, you got to use the language. You got to be active with the language. But it sure helps to learn some tips. Some grammar tips are really good. They're clues, they're tips, and they're tricks. So a, de, after a preposition, you got to follow with an infinitive. That's why to dream about something is soñar con. I dream of going to the moon. It's sueño con. Con is a preposition. Going, I may say ing in English, but I got to go infinitive in Spanish. Sueño con ir, viajar a la luna. That's just a little mention about prepositions in grammar. Grammar has its place. Now, before, with present subjunctive, you're talking about something that hasn't happened yet. Before I graduate, antes de que me gradúe. Before they get here for the party, antes de que lleguen para la fiesta. Before it's over, antes de que se termine. Before it happens again, antes de que pase otra vez. Before we eat, antes de que comamos. When do you use past subjunctive? How do you do past subjunctive? You take the aorist form of the preterite, change that O to an A, and you've got it. No exceptions. When do we use the past subjunctive, verb number 9? If you're talking about something that hadn't happened yet, like before I took off, antes de que me fuera. Before I left, antes de que saliera. Before I took the test, antes de que tomara el examen. Before I knew him, antes de que lo conociera. Before I knew her, antes de que la conociera. Before we did it, antes de que lo hiciéramos. Before I read it, antes de que lo leyera. Before I thought about it, antes de que lo pensara. Before it happened, antes de que pasara. Before they got married, antes de que se casaran. Before he painted his car, antes de que pintara su carro. You go on and on and on. Power, power, power. Learn how to conjugate these subjunctives and you can say so much. And it's the top echelon, the top rung of the ladder is the subjunctive. Okay, cluster 1, cluster 2. Let's take a look at cluster 3. Después de que plus verb number 3, present tense, verb number 4, preterite, and verb number 5, imperfect. Well, what does it mean? After plus what you do, did, or used to do. What you do, did, or used to do. Or after what happens, what did happen, or what used to happen. So, for example, talk about things that you do all the time. After I get up, después de que me levanto, after I get to work, después de que llego al trabajo. These are things that happen all the time. It's a statement of fact. After, in any of these tenses here, 3, 4, or 5, after I get to work, después de que llego al trabajo. This is what happens, what you do. After it rains, después de que llueve. After mom gets home, she makes dinner. Después de que mamá llega a la casa, prepara la cena. After dad gets home, he makes dinner. Después de que papá llega a la casa, él prepara la cena. After I read a book, después de que leo un libro. After we talk, I always feel better. Después de que hablamos, siempre me siento mejor. After we win a game, después de que ganamos un partido, celebramos. We celebrate. Let's take it into the past preterite, verb number 4. After it rained, después de que llovió. After we won the game, después de que ganamos el partido. After I saw the movie, después de que vi la película. After I got married, después de que me casé. After I met her, después de que la conocí. After I did it, después de que lo hice. After she called me, después de que me llamó. Okay? You're talking about things that happen or happened. Let's talk about something that you used to do or used to happen. Let's go imperfect, right? The aba ia form. Ser, ver, and ir are the 3 irregular imperfect. Ser is era, ir is iba, and ver is veía, V-E-I accent A. All right, let's say after some things that you used to do. After I would get to school, después de que llegaba a la escuela. After we would go to the beach, después de que íbamos a la playa, we would always go out later to dinner. Siempre después íbamos a cenar. After I would read a book, después de que leía un libro, I would go to bed, me acostaba. After I would take a test, I would always feel relieved. Después de que tomaba un examen, siempre me sentía desestresado, me sentía aliviado. Same thing here. What used to happen? Like I said, after it would rain all the time, después de que llovía. After it would snow, we would go to the mountains. Después de que nevaba, íbamos a las montañas. After we would play, I would take a nap when I was a little kid. Después de jugábamos afuera, siempre tomaba una siesta. So, after, if you're talking about what you do, did, or used to do, it's going to be indicative. Remember, indicative is a non-subjunctive verb tense. Verb numbers 0, 1, and 2 are not verb tenses. They're just structures. There's infinitive. There's the present participle, the ing, and ado, ido, verb number 2, the past participle. But you can use any of these indicative, present, preterite, or imperfect, after. However, look down here, this cluster. Después de que plus verb number 8, you're talking about something that hasn't happened yet. After I get married next week, después de que me case, after I graduate, después de que me gradúe, after they come over to the house, después de que vengan a la casa, after they arrive, después de que lleguen. If you say after and something has not happened yet, you've got to go verb number 8, present subjunctive, opposite vowel. After it rains, después de que llueva. After it snows, we're going to go to the mountains. Después de que nieve or caiga nieve, vamos a ir a las montañas. After the teacher gets here, después de que llegue la maestra. After the baby is born, it's a ZC. Después de que nazca el bebé. I like nazca, it sounds like NASCAR. When do you use past subjunctive after? Okay? If something never happened, you're reminiscing in the past, remembering the past and during a time frame, whether you're older, middle-aged, you're in your 20s, you're a teenager, right? Youth years, your infantile years, you say, yeah, after I graduated from college, I was going to start a new career. Well, if you never graduated from college, it'd be después de que me graduara. Now, if you say after I graduated from college and you did graduate, it would be después de que me gradué, then say what you did. But if you're saying, gosh, you're remembering something that you never did, after I graduated, I was going to blah, blah, blah. Después de que me graduara. Let's say you never got married, okay? Maybe that's good, maybe that's bad, I don't know. For me, it's the way to go. La vida casada, mi señora, la quiero con todo mi corazón. Es mi media naranja. Okay, after I got married, like for me, después de que me casé, tuvimos una familia. We had a family. Después de que me casé, we're right up here. It happened, right? Something that happened. Something did happen. I got married. After I got married, después de que me casé, after I got married, I was going to have a family. You never got married and you didn't have a family. Después de que me casara, iba a tener una familia. After I had $1 million, I was going to buy a house at the beach. Después de que tuviera $1 million, iba a comprar una casa en la playa. Tuviera. Okay, how about after I, let's see, another example. After I moved to Europe, I was going to start a new career. Después de que me mudara a Europa, iba a empezar una nueva carrera. Después de que. How about a romantic thing? After I told her I loved her, you never told her. You did love her. You did love her, so it's something you did. That's got to be indicative, right? It's indicative of something that happened. It indicates. But after I talked to her, I was going to tell her that I loved her. Let's say you never talked to her. So that would be después de que le hablara, le iba a decir que la amaba. Isn't that beautiful? After I talked with her, después de que hablara con ella, you never talked to her. Le iba a decir, or iba a decirle que la amaba, that I loved her. But let's say you did talk to her, then you're up here. Indicative, not subjunctive, indicative. Después de que le hablé, after I talked to her or with her. Después de que hablé con ella, I told her that I loved her. Le dije que la amaba. Y un año después, a year later, nos casamos. We got married. So there you go. From A to Z, from Alpha to Omega, ladies and gentlemen. It's all right here. This is not snake oil. This is Spanish. Real Spanish. So, when you put your head down on the pillow, now I lay me down to sleep, right? And thank you, listener and learner, community member, for passing on in a comment to me how that prayer went. I kind of forgot. That's a prayer my mom taught me when I was a kid, and I used to say it all the time. And once you reminded me, now I've got it down. But at any rate, when you put your head on the pillow tonight, tomorrow morning, whenever your sleep pattern is, just take a minute, forget about all the stress of life or the happiness of life, and just go neutral on everything else around you, and just try to make some phrases in your mind with after. It doesn't make any, don't try to put yourself into a cluster necessarily. Just on the pillow, eyes closed. Yeah, after I get up tomorrow, wait a minute, that hasn't happened yet. So yeah, después de que me levante mañana. Yeah. After, it was so funny. After we went to the movies, we went out to dinner. We did go to the movies. We did go out to dinner. It did happen. That's indicative. It's not subjunctive. Después de que fuimos al cine, salimos a cenar. We went out to eat. So make up phrases, sentences with después or antes. Antes by itself, before. Después can mean after. What else can it mean? Later. Después, later. Okay? So there you go. Antes and después de can be followed by infinitive or by a noun. Antes de que, when you're talking about something that hasn't happened yet, like before I get married, you're not married yet, would be present subjunctive, opposite vowel. Antes de que me case. If you're talking about before and something hadn't happened yet, right? Like I met her 2 years before we got married. La conocí, preterite, 2 años antes de que nos casáramos, because we hadn't gotten married yet. Okay? Over here, if you're talking about after you do something, you did something, or you used to do something, that's present, preterite, or imperfect. If you're talking about something after something happens, like snowing, or did happen, it snowed, or after it would snow all the time, después de que nevaba, salíamos a jugar en la nieve. We would go out and play in the snow. I grew up in Nueva York. Yo crecí en Nueva York. I spent my youth in the snow, ladies and gentlemen. Oh my gosh. My boots, freezing snow, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, and the last one again, después de que, if something hasn't happened yet and you say after we get there, después de que lleguemos. If you want to say after we arrive, would just be, or after arriving, después de llegar. After we arrive, después de que lleguemos. After we arrived, después de que llegamos. After we arrive there every summer, this is what we do, después de que llegamos, siempre vamos al mar. After we arrive every summer, we always go out to the ocean. Okay, and then down here again, if it's something that never happened, after I got married, I never got married, después de que me casara. Okay, that's a lot, but hopefully we presented it in digestible chunks. We've talked about antes and después before in prior lessons. We've talked about antes de que and después de que, subjunctive and so on and so forth. But this is the first time we've put it together in greater depth. Okay, so you're ready for it. Baby steps, not baby steps. We're taking major strides right now with our Spanish. Okay, so that's the lesson for today. Hopefully this is helping you on a daily basis, because goodness gracious, Dios mío, chispas cuadradas. How many times do we say before and after in an expression on a daily basis. So this is something that's really critical for you to be really comfortable with everyday conversation. Now you know how to communicate anything you want after these. Okay? If something comes to mind later after this lesson, believe me, I will pass it on to you. Okay, amigos, gracias por todo. Cuídense mucho. Suscríbanse, por favor. Subscribe, please, ¿verdad? Y sean buenos, tengan cuidado y tomen su agua. Gracias. Colorín colorado, esta lección se ha enseñado. See ya.